Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Wishbone Football. I am Chad, and welcome into episode 1.17. We are up to 17 already, if you can believe it. Um, this week is going to be just a bit of a review of the preseason AP Top 25 that has come out. There is a lot of buzz about that, a lot of fun stuff, a lot of negative stuff, and I wanted to get into that. And also, I just had a couple of, I had a NFL um, thing that I want to get into as well. So we will jump right into it. So first, the AP Top 25 was released Monday at noon. Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, Notre Dame, Texas is the top five. I I actually don't think there's any argument to be had there. I think most people had those five as their top five teams in the country. Placement is going to be a different story, yes, but it's these are all the same top five teams. Now let's get into the placement of them. That's going to be where the conversation starts. And I think I don't want to argue against Ohio State being number one because that would be foolish of me being a Longhorn fan because we all know what happened last year. We got really excited. Texas was AP number one preseason. And week two, we head to the shoe and we are annihilated, to put it lightly. And I think there was a bit of relief in the Texas fan base where we could say, okay, whew, we're good. We're not we're not number one. There, we can dial back the pressure a little bit, not a lot, but we can all feel a little bit better about not being number one. And I think that's fair. However, Texas, I Texas, I believe should have been lower. Everyone will say that they're top five. I'll agree with them, but that's not where I had them. And so looking at what my projection was to be, I did have Texas at five, but they could have been lower or higher in my point of view. Like I have Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, Notre Dame, Texas. So my top five is that I had released Sunday is exactly the same top five as the AP. Humble brag, no big deal. But the where the gap is in the AP top 25 preseason that they've released, I think is really does not come until I will say position 8, 9, 10. And what I mean by that is so Indiana is 6. I think there could have been an argument to put them at 3. I think Kirk Cignetti is going to get that team turned around and be look like they're going to be threatening Ohio State and Oregon to win the Big Ten. Miami was 7, and I I feel the same way with them as I do Indiana, that their national championship run, ultimately losing to Indiana in the national championship, I think is now being overlooked this year. I think that they have done enough this year in through the spring and in the off season to be right back up there. 8 is Texas A&M. No arguments there. I had Texas A&M 20th, but it could have went different ways as well. Ole Miss was 9, which I absolutely love that they are rated higher. They are ranked higher than LSU, who came in at 11. At 10, excuse me, at 10 is Oklahoma. And I think there are some people who have been trying to give Oklahoma love this offseason, me included, that got a sense of relief when they saw the AP drop and see Oklahoma at 10. Because everyone doesn't want to give enough credit to a returning quarterback in Mateer, but I think that they deserve more credit than what they're getting. And I think the AP is showing that. I think they're right. The 6 to 10 range is where they should be. And actually, ultimately, I had them at 6 in mind. Like I said, LSU was rated 11. Texas Tech was 12. Alabama 13, BYU 14, and SC also tied for 14. I think the BYU is a bit of a reach. And the reason I say that is because you are putting BYU only 2 places behind who is favored to win the Big 12. And I don't really agree with that. And because I think there's more of a separation that needs to be there between Texas Tech and BYU being 12 and 14 respectively, and Alabama being right there at 13 feels a little weak. Now, in the same breath, we can be saying the same thing about 14B of SC. I think Lincoln Riley is getting a little bit more respect there, but it still needs to be shown. Last year was a bit of a flop, and I think 14 is a bit of a stretch for them, especially when we look at some of the teams behind them. And let's get into those here. So Michigan is 16. Washington is 17. Penn State is 18. SMU is 19. Tennessee is 20. I think Tennessee should feel a little slighted here. Being 20, being behind Washington and SMU and Penn State. I mean, Penn State has a bit of a softer schedule this year, but they are looking for a big rebound after the coaching change that they did. So I think Penn State getting a nod at 18 here in the top 25 is sort of a big deal. And then moving on, 21 through 25, Utah, Iowa, Houston, Louisville, and Missouri. Let's go back to the 6 through 10 here, because I think that could be where the misses are the biggest. Because Texas Tech, for me, even without Brennan Sorsby, should be a top 10 team. I think that A&M should be more at 10, Texas Tech up in the 8 spot, and and maybe Notre Dame and Texas taking a slide. So you move Notre Dame to 5, Texas to 6, and an Indiana or a Miami leapfrog them to take over the 4th position. But we have to remember that these are the preseason. They are simply going based on what their outlook is with respect to talent. How they have done in the transfer portal, how they have recruited, and ultimately what their early fall camp and what their spring camp has looked like. So you can't really give the voters at the AP Top 25 too much of a hassle over this. It's their first one of the year, and they'll work on it as they get farther into it this year. The next thing I wanted to talk about, I did something stupid the other day. I was looking for the updated NIL numbers for the NIL Go portal. Everyone, you guys know I like to bring an update to you guys on a weekly or on a monthly basis. So I didn't see any for the month ending in July. And so I actually reached out to them, got a pretty immediate response back via email from them, and I was told that they're releasing them every 2 months. That had sort of went over my head. That I think when I was doing them, it was just sort of a mainstay. In every 3 to 4 episodes, I was releasing a new batch of numbers for us to sort of pick apart, which I did in episode 14, which was only 2 weeks ago, but I was updating the end of June numbers. So timeline is still little bit off here, but that's okay because we are getting back to school. We are getting back into better routines now as we look to end summer and start looking towards football in 10 days. Week 0 is in 10 days. Speaking of week 0, we know what is coming down the pipe for 2027 and week 0. That is going to be Wake Forest and Syracuse playing a game near my home in Toronto, Ontario. I'm very excited for that. That will be a game that I will definitely be at, whether it is a ticket holder or a member of the media. Either way, I would like to be there. And now, the problem that I have with that is that I'm one of the drum bangers that says keep college football games on campus. And that's the way it should be. That's how I see it best fitting for college football. But I'm not going to be too upset when they want to do an international game in Canada and make a week 0 game there. So I'm very excited for that. If anyone would like to join me in that endeavor, hit me up. You can find me anywhere you have social media. Chad Wishbone. So Moving on to my next piece, I have done a bit of a breakdown. I know a couple of weeks ago I had come to you with the rest edge in the NFL, breaking down how that looks based on what each team's rest is, what their positive or negative rest is. So ultimately, we knew and we found out that Chicago had the best one at plus 15 days, and the LA Chargers had the worst at minus 24 days. But the angle that I wanted to bring it to you this week was tying it together with the number of miles flown. Now, there is a strong candidate in a curveball to that I do want to get into. So let me start there. So the reason I wanted to do that is because we have all of these wonderful places and wonderful people on Twitter who really just begin to extract data as much as they can with respect to the schedule. And one thing that continuously always comes up is how far everyone travels. Sometimes a big network will put together some sort of a fun graphic that shows a plane darting, in this case, all over the world for some teams. And you just it's fun to be a part of. It's fun to see that. And I always have fun with stuff like that. As you can see, if you follow me on Twitter, with some of the people that I like to follow, and some people that I've brought hopefully to you as well. Ray Carpenter, Ryan Paganetti, um, people who like to look at football from a purely data-driven mind that I simply don't have the time to do. I know that sounds bad, but um, really for me, the love of me doing this podcast and the YouTube video and all of that fun stuff is really just me having an outlet and where to put it all. When my wife is sick of me showing her highlights from preseason games. So the rest edge and the miles traveled. So let's dive into that a little bit here. So we're going to go farthest travel to shortest travel. And honestly, the difference between first and last is 30,000 miles. I should have done this in kilometers, being a Canadian, but that's wild to think about, right? So the team who is traveling the farthest is the San Francisco 49ers. If they ever make it out of practicing next to that substation, and I can't believe that we continue to talk about that each and every week, but it's fun that we do. So, San Francisco 49ers travel 38,105 miles. Sorry. And what I wanted to tie that into is where they fall on the rest edge chart. And for San Francisco, for as much as they are traveling, they're a net zero for rest edge. They're one of only two teams that are a net zero for a rest edge, which I find interesting. So as much as they are traveling throughout the season, they're not losing rest edge they're right in the middle. So I think that the NFL, when building the schedule, they, they sort of did San Francisco a favor, probably by doing that. And I think that's interesting that they come out right in the middle. Them and the Browns are the two um, net zero rest edge teams. The second furthest travel team, uh, the LA Rams, just over 34,000 miles traveled. When we look at them for net rest, they are, I have to find them here. LA is -6. So already we're seeing a disparity in they're traveling over 34,000 miles and they're already -6 rest days, which I think is going to be significant. The the third team, the Houston Texans, are traveling just over 28,000 miles, but their net rest is actually +8, which when it falls in the chart here, that puts them sixth best net rest for the year. And I mean, that's going to be something that is going to help them down the road. So if we think about the +8, that's an one day every other week for the Texans. That's going to be significant long term on both on the team, but the trade-off is that you're flying 28,000 miles, which I mean everyone wants to say that it doesn't matter, but I really truly think it does. Now, the fourth team is Dallas. Dallas is third best net rest with +12. New England is 27,000 miles, and New England comes in at +8 net rest. Miami is also 27,000 miles, and they're -6. And so for a young team that they're just trying to put something together on the field for -6, it can be a big loss travel wise. So we've the next one I want to highlight is I wanted to build to this point, and then we'll kind of just run through sort of the center of this list. So the LA Chargers are traveling 26,000 miles, 24,000, sorry, this season. And their net rest, as we know, as we all heard in episode 14, the Chargers are -24. And you throw in losing your center as they just did this year or this week to that's a problem. That I they are, as we laid out in episode 16 with our NFL futures bets that we did, that's going to play a role in that number. And I wonder if that has already taken a toll on the betting market. So let's see that. While I'm pulling that up, we'll sort of run through a few in the center here, in the middle. Um, Jacksonville is traveling 23,000. Seahawks are traveling 22. Eagles are 22. Saints are 21. Raiders are 21. The Bills are 19. And I want to pause there and I want to talk about the Bills specifically. I had brought this up a few weeks ago in a different podcast, and it's really it's going to be something that there is going to be a conversation around it when it takes place. And what I'm talking about is week 3. No, I'm sorry, week 5 and week 6 for the Buffalo Bills. This is an interesting one for me because I think that this is going to eliminate a lot of travel for the Buffalo Bills if they ultimately do it. And what I'm talking about is how their schedule falls. So week 4, they are week 5, they are at the Rams Monday night football at SoFi. And I've talked about this before, but Monday night, you're playing in LA, you're in Buffalo. That is several thousand miles of travel. And then you're back in Las Vegas for week 6 for a 1:00 game. I'm sorry, for 4 Eastern game. Bills at Raiders week 6. And I wonder if there is any thought by Brandon Beane, GM in Buffalo, Joe Brady, the head coach, is there any thought about going from LA to Las Vegas? Maybe you stay the night Monday in LA. Tuesday morning, you fly to Las Vegas and you do your practices and walkthrough in Las Vegas or somewhere around there. Because you traveling home from a Monday night game in LA to get back to Buffalo Tuesday morning at 5 a.m. Tuesday's a write-off. We would know that because that's going to be a walkthrough, if anything, or it's an off day completely. Wednesday, you're practicing. Maybe Thursday, you're practicing. Friday is a walkthrough. And Saturday, you're traveling back to Las Vegas. I think that's a travel tax that the Buffalo Bills could sort of look the other way on and change their travel plans accordingly. I would think that would be in their best interests as well as the players. I think the players would be open to that as well. Obviously, there's family involved and things like that, but when you are an NFL player, this is your life for the most part between the end of July until when your season is over. And for the Buffalo Bills, hopefully comes to a close on Valentine's Day in February. But when it comes to that little piece of their schedule, I think that's something that they can be looking at as a benefit, because after that they have a bye week. So after week 6, they have a bye week 7. right? Do I have that right? Yes. So week 7, they are on a bye. And I think that would alleviate a lot of travel problems for them. Because even just you're done the game Monday night. It's 8:30 on the West Coast. You leave there, 3-hour time change. It's it, it it can mess with your mind. And then for you to be home 4 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, you're essentially writing that day off, Tuesday. I think that. So that was just something that I wanted to sort of re-bring up as we go through this. So continuing on here, Broncos 19,000, Chiefs 18, Lions 18, Commanders 18, Titans 18. And that string of teams right there. Denver, KC, Detroit, Washington. Washington is +9. Kansas City is -2. Denver is +3. Washington +9, and Tennessee is +6. So you can start to pick out further things aside from just the rest edge you might have, and really start to tie in the miles that you're traveling. Now, I want to flip right to the end of this list and then sort of work backwards. So the team that travels the least is the Carolina Panthers this year. 8,740 miles. I almost said kilometers again. Don't rip on me for that. It's I think that's significant. 8,700. Is that not the Bills' trip to LA for a Monday night game? That's pretty close. So when we then look at what the rest is for the Carolina Panthers, they are +8. And that is huge. So if there is ever now I want to start tying it into what I think this team is going to do overall. I'm not very high on Carolina as a team because I just don't think that Bryce Young is ultimately going to be the answer there. But is that not a cupcake travels schedule for the team, along with you getting +8 net rest days? If I'm looking at that and I'm the GM, I'm expecting teams to be ready, because we saw that week 1 of the preseason, the Bills and the Panthers. The first play call that came in for the Panthers, there was a delay of penalty on that. Like, that's the sort of thing that you need to have buttoned up if you are not traveling a lot and having fresh bodies not coming off large travels, but then also to be having an extra day of rest on your opponents on average every other week. That's significant. You're playing 17 games and you're having eight positive days of net rest. And really, for Carolina, that's good. I think most teams on this list, when you're looking at San Francisco with 38,000, LA Rams with 34,000, teams like you look at Carolina and say 8,000 miles, that's it. it's going to be significant. So the second to last one on this list, the Browns, 9,000. They are net zero, as we have previously mentioned. The Chicago Bears are 10,000. I really think that is a product of their division as well. That division is not very far apart at all. And speaking about the Buffalo Bills piece, I think just a trip to Miami from Buffalo is playing a role in that once a year. The Bucks are 12,000, Packers are 12,000, Jets are 14, Steelers are 14, Vikings are 14, Bengals are 15, Cardinals are 15,000. So you really get the sense of there are some teams that are getting a excellent net rest edge in their schedule, and they're also getting the benefit of not having to travel a whole lot either. And I think, again, Carolina is a perfect example of that. That's a team that is not traveling a lot, and you're getting a day every other game. That's sort of unheard of. So when it all shakes out, Chicago being plus 15 and them being a team that is only traveling 10,000 miles, I think there needs to be more stock put into that. Because whenever we people on the East Coast are looking at games to bet, my first move is always what teams are traveling west to east and playing a 1 o'clock game, because I always believe that is an advantage that not everyone is looking at. Of course, it's playing a role of who it is and which teams, but that's always going to be an advantage that you can't look away from. And so with Chicago being 10,000 miles and having the most rest edge days of plus 15, I think that's something that you can look at and hope that they can transfer that into on-field production. And that's part of the reason why I have been in fantasy drafting as much Colson Loveland as I can, and a little bit of Rome Odunze. Caleb Williams is still not high on my draft board, I will say, but I don't feel like I'm forcing myself to take him, if that makes sense. Because if he falls to you in the right position where the top 3 or 5 guys are already gone, Allen is gone, Lamar is gone, Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, those guys are already being taken, I don't have a problem drafting Caleb Williams because of what that team did last year, which was strong, and ensuring, and with the removal of DJ Moore now, I really think that Colson Loveland is going to be basically their number 2 receiver as a tight end. He's almost I I don't want to put him as high as Brock Bowers, because Brock Bowers I think is going to be tight end one at the end of the year, and there's no doubt about that. But Colson Loveland, I think, is going to be tight end two that you are getting just a couple of rounds later, which in the ADP um, draft stock value, there's really still going to be value in those guys in the later rounds. So as I went through this, it was just something that I felt needed to be highlighted again. And I wanted to go over the miles traveled, and really, in hindsight, I regret not doing a kilometers traveled. I think that would have been a fun move, because 38,000 miles would have looked a whole lot more fun put into kilometers. Let me do that quickly. So in kilometers, we would have been 61,155. So maybe we'll remember that for next year when we were doing the same breakdown. But that wraps it up for me here. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things with respect to the top 25. Make sure that you guys knew that my top 25 that I had released on the weekend came out looking the exact same as the AP preseason top 25. And tying the net rest and the miles traveled together into one conversation was really something that I saw both of them, but then it took me, I'll say, a week of getting it into my head and understanding that they need to be looked at together as much as they are separated, because it can be, as we saw, significant. Some teams that are traveling a whole lot also are missing out on net rest as well, and it needed to be highlighted. I will say that. So that does it for me. Episode 1.17. Again, thank you for listening. You can find me Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Twitter is at WishboneFB. Instagram is WishboneChad. And on YouTube at Wishbone Football. Want to thank everyone. Continue to listen, like, subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.